Welcome to the Guberman Appleby Immigration Lawyers YouTube channel. Today we're doing another segment where we discuss immigration news that's in the media. Today we're going to be focusing on an article that was published in the Globe and Mail today. The title of that article is "Canadians Working in the US Risk Detention If They Travel, Lawyers Warn." This does flow into what we've been experiencing in the past few days, and this morning you mentioned we already had 6 calls about Canadians freaking out about this kind of thing. So just to sort of highlight some of what's mentioned in this article, it talks about many US immigration lawyers are coming out with very strong warnings for their clients, for people working and studying in Canada, including Canadians. This is a result of a whole bunch of executive orders that the Trump administration has issued. Some of these firms, mainly US firms are referenced in this article, have been sending out very strongly worded memos to their clients, speaking to things as strong as don't leave the US. Other lawyers are talking about and giving advice and guidance around what to do with your devices. Some of this advice I disagree with, but we'll get into that later. Speaking to the overall change in attitude by US Customs and Border Protection at the border, and also ICE, which for the most part, fortunately, is something Canadians don't have to deal with. I just want to start off, Joel, by asking you what you think of this comment made by one of the US lawyers quoted in this article. The problem with this administration is that there is no reliable frame of reference to predict how things are going to go at the border.
This is all very interesting. I feel that a good portion of this is panic reaction. Is there heightened security at the borders? Undoubtedly. Is it somewhat more difficult to travel? Perhaps. As you know, we haven't experienced this in any of our clients. No one has reported any kind of difficulty in entering the United States, and I feel it's fear-mongering. Is the administration unpredictable? Of course it's unpredictable, because the administration seems to change its mind about some things every day. But in terms of actual policy with legitimate travelers to the United States, persons who hold visas, work permits, etc., especially on the Canadian border, there's been no particular edict about a change.
What I find interesting about this quote in particular, it's an international border. I mean, it's always discretionary to enter another country. It's always been unpredictable.
And that's exactly what I've been telling, and it's more than 6 this morning, people who are very concerned about their international travel. We have a visa in the United States. We want to travel to Europe. Are we going to have difficulty getting back into the United States? There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of refusals of persons entering the United States every single day. That's the same as it's been for the last 50 years. Ports of entry can refuse for all kinds of different legitimate reasons, including inspecting telephones and seeing nefarious words or things perhaps not anti-administration words. Still thought there was some degree of freedom of speech in the United States. But all of these things have pre-existed. Nothing's new under the sun.
And that's what makes this so interesting to me. It would take so long to get a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request that would tell us. I'd be curious to know if there's really any change in the numbers of Canadians who are being detained, not let in. That would be a very curious thing to find out as to whether, in fact, there's an actual increase, or if all of these incidents are just getting more coverage.
Well, my point exactly. Now it's front page news. When the New York Times is carrying an article about somebody being refused entry and detained on the Mexican border, they weren't even news, let alone front page news. There's a lot of panic. I won't say it's completely unnecessary. One has to be cautious and careful about traveling, making sure everything is in order. If you're traveling across a land border and you have a joint in your glove compartment, then you're an idiot.
Always, for traveling, not only with the United States, but any country, a good resource to really get an indication of the temperature as to what is going on is to check the DFAT website, the Department of Foreign Affairs. The Canadian government has an official website. You can type in any, or there's a drop down actually, for any country you're going to, and they have like a flag, orange, yellow, green. So far, the government hasn't changed its threat level or warning level, but as is noted in this article, there has been a little update just reminding people who are staying in the US for over 30 days, if they haven't already been fingerprinted, etc., that you do have to register, which we talked about in one of our other sessions that's also posted on our YouTube channel if you'd like to refer to that. But I think that's a pretty good indication. The Canadian government very much has its, hand on this kind of button. It's still green as far as travel to the US.
One of the things about this particular Globe and Mail article heightens the issue of the press reporting these items, because I'm a big fan of the press holding governments accountable, but the press invariably doesn't get it 100% right. So the paragraph in this article that says reminding Canadians to register if you're going to stay longer than 30 days is only a half, maybe even a tenth of the equation, because as we previously said, if you travel by air, if you've been given an I-94 fingerprinted, you don't have to register. A little bit of information is a very dangerous thing.
A couple of other points, and this goes to the issue of the phones and social media. One of the individuals in this article is quoted as saying that they've advised travelers to either travel with a burner phone or wipe their phone of anything that could potentially raise issues with border officials. I don't know. To me, this seems like a pretty crazy idea. And also there's this other thing that we know for certain, it's this really fancy technology called Google. I mean, unless you totally clean out all of your social media accounts, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to be the saving grace for your entry to the US. This is focusing on people who work in the US, people with authorization to work in the US. One of the lawyers in the article, it says that a lot of his clientele is from South Asia and the Middle East. In that instance, his advice is not to leave. But that is something that's very different than Canadians.
Rather than call my colleagues in the United States who are quoted in this article as alarmists, we have to remember, exactly to your point, that attorneys based in the United States are dealing with entries to the United States from everywhere in the world. Some countries are certainly at higher risk of being detained or stopped, no matter what the situation is, than Canadians. By and large, we deal with Canadians entering the United States, and I think this heightened alert to some minor extent might apply to Canadians, but not to the extent that the rest of the world has to pay attention.
Thank you for listening to our discussion of Canadians working in the U.S., risk detention if they travel, lawyers warn. We hope you'll join us for other segments on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions on this topic or any other Canadian or U.S. immigration topics, feel free to contact us. You can DM us, you can send us an email, info@gaimmlaw.com, or you're welcome to phone us 416-548-7100. I'm Laney Appleby, and this is Guberman, and we look forward to you joining us next time.